All right, then we're going to move on. Now, let's think about what I just said. Okay, I know it's a lot. Okay, so and by the way, I advise watch this lecture like 5 times. Okay, because it's a lot and it comes fast. Okay, and again, as I said, it's crucial. Okay, so you need to let it percolate. You need to think about it. So, little philosophical interlude. Let's think about what I just said. Phonemes are never actually observed. Okay? A trick question that I used to ask in my exams, and sometimes I still ask, is how often do you hear a phoneme? And the answer is never, right? Because a phoneme is an idea. It's in your head. You can never hear it. But if you can never hear it, how do you get to it? Okay? Well, the answer is through a process of abstraction. Okay? So in other words, you hear many manifestations of a given sound. And you abstract from it the idealized form of the phoneme. Now, do you remember the software that Dr. Pickering demonstrated that Dr. Thompson created, the accent coach? Now, what was the crucial characteristics? I forget what it's called this minute. It's variable, high variability, I think. Right. What does that mean? That he has like 20, 30, 50, 100 different speakers producing the same sound, and then you hear 50, 100 different versions of the same sound. Let's translate this in what we've been talking about. You're hearing a bunch of allophones, and that helps you abstract the idealized phoneme that is what you need to learn. Okay? Because you're trying to get somebody who has their own native system in which that sound might not exist at all to create the abstract phoneme that they will then use to recognize the phonemes in speech. Okay? That's why high variability training works. Okay? Because it mimics this process here. Okay? Where you are abstracting from input the phoneme in your head. Okay? So again, going back to the original definition, remember we said competence versus performance, and I said competence is long, basically abstract, and performance is parole. In other words, basically concrete, actual instantiations of the actual sound. Okay? By the way, sometimes people are not familiar with the word instantiation, or if they are, they say, "Why me, God?" So what does instantiation mean exactly? Okay? An instance of something is a particular case of something. Okay? You can think of it in a sense as an example. Okay? So I can show you here a bottle, right? This is a bottle. Okay? Is it every bottle in the universe? No. It's an instance of the idea of bottle. Okay? Somehow we recognize behind this object here, in our heads, we say, yeah, it looks like what a bottle should look like. It's got water in it. Yeah, it's a pretty good example of a bottle. This is an instance of the concept of bottle. So therefore, this is an instantiation of the concept of bottle. Okay? If you are into philosophy, Plato would say that there is an idea in the noumenal world that is then reflected in the phenomenal world of reality. Okay? If you're not a philosopher, feel free to wake up from the nap now that you took. All right, now we're going to get a little bit deeper into this whole idea of allophones. So linguists speak of distribution, right? Because when you come across these sounds, they're never in isolation, right? I mean, you never just hear, puh, right? It's usually in the middle of a sentence, in the middle of a word, right? So that's what we call distribution, right? And so linguists have figured out that there are two kinds of distribution, okay? One is called complementary, the other one is called contrastive, all right? And so what we're going to look at is how do they differ, okay? So the first one that we're going to look at is complementary, right? So remember we said that there was the regular p, then you have the aspirated p and the unreleased p, right? All three of these are allophones of the phoneme p, right? And by now you should understand what I just said, okay? So if you still didn't understand it, if you're home, rewind the lecture, listen to it again, and when you come back here, until you understand what I just said, okay? Otherwise, you know that you haven't processed the material, okay? So these are the allophones that are the realizations, the instances of the phoneme p. And these are the different environments in which the different allophones occur, okay? So the aspirated p is at the beginning of the word followed by a vowel. The unreleased p is at the end, and the quote-unquote regular p is in the middle of the word, or the word, okay? So that is the complementary distribution. The contrastive distribution is minimal pair, okay? So in Pete and beat, that is contrastive distribution, okay? You either get a p or you get a b. They're exactly in the same environment, but the meaning is different, then it's contrastive. Okay? So that's the difference between complementary, which is all the various allophones of the same phoneme, and contrastive, where they're different phonemes. Okay? So one way to think about this, if it's complementary, they're the same phoneme, just different environments. If it's contrastive, well, they're different phonemes. All right?
Like p and b.
Like p and b, yes. Or t and d, or s and sh, e and e, and so on and so forth. Okay? All right. Now, just so we try and make it a little bit easier to understand, here's a question. Why do you never meet Superman and Clark Kent at the same time? Why are they never together at the same time in the same room? Because they're the same person. Okay? Does that ring a bell with what we just talked about? Okay? Why do you never see these two allophones in the same position?
Because it's either one or the other.
Because they're the same sound. They're the same phoneme, right? It's either one or the other, right? So with Superman and Clark Kent, if Lois Lane is being captured by the villain and she's about to be thrown in a volcano or something like that, I don't know. I haven't watched the Superman movies in a long time. Does anybody remember like something? I don't know. Isn't she like, I don't know, whatever. In case of big danger, Superman is there. If somebody needs to be saved, Superman is there. If they need comic relief, then Clark Kent is there. Okay? Because they're the same person. Okay? Conversely, you see, for example, Lois Lane and, I don't know, I forget who was the other reporter in the movie. Whatever. Whoever the other reporter is in the movie, you see them together all the time. No problem, right? Well, because they're different people. Okay? So that's the situation where you have different phonemes. Okay? So it would be a minimal pair. Okay? So that's the explanation of why Clark Kent and Superman cannot be in the same room. Well, because they're the same person. Much like you will never find an aspirated p in English in a position where you don't get an aspirated puff. You get an unreleased puff, for example. Okay? Yes?
In what context would you be talking about contrasted distributions or complementary distributions?
Well, so, I mean, basically, so let's say that you are, so the typical situation would be we parachute you someplace in the Amazon, okay, with some food and a tape recorder and a notebook, and we say, don't worry about it, we'll come and get you in a few weeks. In the meantime, learn the language, write it down, and then we'll publish a grammar when you come back. And we'll give you a PhD, by the way. Okay, you say, no problem, what could go wrong? Have a good one. Right? And we fly off. We're in a chopper. And we played the Ride of the Valkyrie. No, sorry. Sorry, completely wrong movie altogether. All right? So now you're like, oh, okay, I'm here in the Amazon, and now I have to learn the language, right? I have no idea because I've never, spoken the local language. So what you do is you start writing down what people say to you, okay? And you have no idea what they're telling you because you don't know the language yet, but you can hear the sounds, right? So you're writing down all the sounds, and let's say for the sake of the argument, that one of the sounds that you write down is this, and one of the sounds that you write down is this. Then you would say, well, I have here all of these distributions, which one are contrastive and which ones are not, right? And so then you have an informant, which is, a person that is nice enough to talk to you in the local tribe, and you say, you start doing like, and the guy says, bottle, or more likely, what the hell are you doing, And then you have to figure out that one is the thing and the other one is, otherwise you'll say, can I have a what the hell are you doing? I'm thirsty. I mean, there's plenty of jokes about anthropologists trying to learn the language, etc. I mean, this is the way people used to do this stuff, okay? I mean, now maybe less, but in the 20s up to still, some people do it, right? I mean, there's a whole technique on how to elicit a language without an interpreter at all. Again, you literally start by showing objects because people, generally speaking, name them. Now, this creates problems, and I'm not going to go into a huge digression here, but it's known as the Gavagai problem, okay? So the idea, this is Quine, a major philosopher. He said, okay, so you are the anthropologist, etc., and you see a rabbit run by, and somebody in the tribe goes, Gavagai. And you say, rabbit. Wait, how do you know that he meant rabbit? Maybe he meant something's running, or hey, there's dinner, or unseparated rabbit parts, right? Because you don't know, because you don't speak the language, right? He calls this radical translation, right? And philosophically speaking, this is a real problem, okay? Because you have nothing that tells you, except reality, okay? Because if you say, can I have what the hell are you doing because I'm thirsty, the rest of the tribe starts laughing hysterically until you realize that that's not called what the hell you call it, it's called something else. And you observe that the others say bottle. And then you say, oh, wait, maybe I misunderstood, okay? There is a joke, and it's apparently not a real story, which is really too bad because it's a fantastic story, that kangaroo meant, what do you mean? And that was, or I don't understand. And that was when Captain Cook first arrived to Australia, whatever, he said, what's that? And they said kangaroo, and they said, oh, it's called a kangaroo. Whereas what the person was saying is, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's apparently not a true story, to my enormous disappointment, because that story you wanted to be true, right? It's too good to be true. All right, so but to go back to your question, so that's what you would then, once you have collected your data, you would say, which of these environments are contrastive so that I have a phoneme, I know that those two are phonemes, and which are not contrastive. So that when I come back with the helicopter weeks later, like, hey, hello, I've got the phonemes of the language. I say, all right, throw them up. Say, no, throw me the ladder. I'll come back out. That's how it works. Otherwise, we leave it. No.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
Yes, of course.
So hypothetically, if you can separate these distributions better and better the more allophones, the more examples that you encounter, right?
Yes.
Just like statistics.
Yes, because, well, I mean, and at some point, you don't need any more. Okay? That is because the moment you find a minimal pair, you're like, all right, those are different phonemes, right? So now, if you say, okay, I've determined that p and b are different phonemes, right? And then I find Ted and dead. Okay, so t and d are different phonemes in English, right? And then I find kill and gill. Brilliant, k and g are phonemes in English. So I've got 6 stops, all right? Do I have any other stops that do not fall in this category of allophones, right? Do I have any other allophones that are stops, which I can kind of hear, I can see on my little portable spectrogram that I took with me on the backpack. It's a very heavy backpack that you carry there. Oh, no, we landed you with the helicopter, so we gave you and it didn't break in going down. So you're like, all right, these are all the stops of the language. Well, now you can stop collecting allophones. Right? Because you know that every other allophone that you're going to find, you can collect allophones for the rest of your life, you will only have 6 stops in English. Well, the glottal stop 7, fine, but let's not be picky. Right?
Yes, right.
Okay. So at some point, there is a law of diminishing returns where you don't need to observe any more allophones. Once you've made the determination through the contrastive minimal pair, then you're like, good, I've got my phonemes. And that's called creating a phonemic inventory for the language. Okay, that's the first step of describing a language, is you want to know what are the phonemes of the language. You make an inventory of the phonemes, and from that, then you start describing the language. Okay? Good. All right. So, let's wrap things up. So, you have complementary distribution. These are the mutually exclusive instantiations. Okay, remember. So you cannot be in the same environment. Okay, so each instantiation, each version, each variety of the allophone occurs in its own environment. Okay, and so these are the allophones, and they are restricted by the environment, right? So you can only be in that environment. The unreleased p in English is only at the end of the word, not elsewhere. If there is something afterwards, it's not an unreleased. Yes?
What about differences in accent? Would that be
Same thing, they're just allophones. Same thing. Okay, so then you have the contrastive distribution, that's the minimal pairs, okay? So there is a distinctive difference in meaning, and of course a difference in one sound. Remember that otherwise it's not a minimal pair. Now, all of this should not be confused with free variation, and that's where the dialectal thing comes into the picture, right? So, and I think we actually talked about this example with Dr. Pickering, right? So you have the word butter, can be pronounced with a T, like I just did, with a flat, butter, okay? And this is the IPA transcription in the American symbol. It's basically a capital D, right? Or it can produce ba with a glottal stop. Okay, you do the glottal stop, right? Do it for us, please. Yeah, see? That's a glottal stop. That's as good a glottal stop as I've heard in a long time. All right. Now, is there a difference in meaning? Okay. Okay. So we've got an American. We've got 2 Americans. All right. So you do it. You do the butter.
Butter.
Butter. See? Now you've got the 3. Was there a difference in meaning? Nope. Therefore, free variation. Okay, they occur in the same environment, so they're not allophones of different phonemes. Okay, it's the same thing.
So no allophones either.
I'm sorry?
There are not allophones either.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, they're allophones of the same phoneme.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but they're not allophones of different phonemes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, actually, the slide here is confusing. It should say, please add of different phonemes to that, otherwise it's confusing.
Yeah, because then you make.
Because, I mean, if they're not allophones, they're phonemes, right? No. So please add of different phonemes. When we put this online, Shihun will have corrected it. I know what I was thinking, but I didn't write it properly. Otherwise, that's confusing. Because, well, if they're not allophones, they're not phonemes, what are they? Coconuts. That's what they are. It's a secret thing. No, they're allophones of the same phoneme. Okay, they're the same thing. All right. So this concludes the lecture. If you're interested in seeing a little bit more, if you say, "Oh, I have not suffered enough. I think I want more pain," then this will give you, well, it's actually quite a fun video. It's basically the same materials that we covered here, but with slightly different emphasis and more languages than just English. As far as I'm concerned, all that we're interested in is English. This will not be on the test, okay? I want to be clear about this. This is extra material. If you say, I want to know more, I'm interested in this stuff, I'm excited, then by all means, watch the video and have fun. But it's not a requirement it's not going to be on the test, it's not going to be, it's not required reading, okay? All right, any questions? See, stunned silence greets. It's a lot to take in, yes, I agree. And in fact, you're overwhelmed. Good. That is par for the course, okay? So if you're home and you're going like, oh my God, what just happened? Yeah, no, that's actually exactly right. You just learned one of the most complex core concepts of the entire discipline, okay? If you said, oh, piece of cake, I'd be like, okay, either you're insane, okay, or you didn't pay attention and you got it completely wrong, or you're better than me because I didn't get this the first time that I heard it, okay? But that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that that's impossible. Or you say you're repeating the course. This is the third time you're taking the class, and by now you're like, okay, that's a possibility as well. But I don't think we actually have anybody doing that. If we have, not a problem. This is complicated stuff, okay? I started it by saying this. I'm going to close by saying this. You will need to watch this several times, okay? Because it's not easy stuff that, yeah, of course, yeah, sure, piece of cake. No, it's complicated. It's one of the core concepts of linguistics. But that's why you need to understand it to go forward. Okay? Because starting with next week, we will be using the concept of phoneme and allophone. And if you don't understand it, I'll be speaking Greek and you will not understand a word of what I'm saying. Okay? So not good. Right? So if you have questions, again, do not hesitate. Email me, email Dr. Nelms if you are in the online sections, and we'll be happy to answer questions. Yes?
What happens if there is one sound in two different words, and that two words have different meanings? For example, in South Spain,
yeah,
there are two words, casa and casa are the same, but one is a house and the other is to hunt.
To what? Oh, hunt.
Hunt.
Yeah.
How do you know if it's an allophone or phoneme?
Well, do they sound the same?
Yes.
Well, then they're homophones. That is, they're just two words that sound the same. Then it's the same phonemes.
But in the Spanish from the region I am,
yeah,
it's different sounds.
Not a problem. I mean, it depends. See, in the other area, right, then it's two different sounds. Those two are going to be different phonemes, right? But for the first region that you said, then in that region, they're the same.
But are they spelled the same with the same letter?
Makes absolutely no difference what they're spelled like.
Still the spelling?
Absolutely none. Remember, spelling
Yeah.
is irrelevant. Okay, so the T-shirts we're making the T-shirt now. Now people will be like, hey, I never got my T-shirt. No, it's a joke.
Then in Southern Spain, casa and casa both sound allophones, the same phoneme.
Correct. It would be the same. I mean, you would have, basically three sounds: k, a, z, and a, right? So those are allophones of k, a, and z. And that's it, right? So because it's like different languages, right? I mean, you cannot say, well, these are phonemes in English, but they're not phonemes in, I think, what was it? I think Vietnamese. In Vietnamese, aspirated and non-aspirated are different phonemes, but they're not in English. Well, that's good because each language has its own set of phonemes. So each dialect has its own set of phonemes. Okay.
That was a question along those same lines. In Mandarin, it's the same way. Aspirated and unaspirated. And I've read, I don't speak it, so I don't know, but I've read that in Shanghainese dialect, aspirated, unaspirated, and voice, so it's a three-way split.
Yeah.
Is there a different word? Is it still minimal pair? So like, pa, ba, ba, ba. Are they still called minimal pairs for each pair? Or is there a word for all three?
Well, actually, in some versions, you can have a minimal triple if you have three sounds, but we don't need to go there.
Okay.
Please forget what I just said. But you can do a minimal pair here and a minimal pair there, and still, all you need is the concept of minimal pair. You don't need more than that. But yeah, you could do the same thing with p, t, and d, right? I mean, you have three sounds, and you can find three words, you can find 4, 5, 6, 7 words that you can create a set of minimal
so
pairs.
Each pair, regardless of whether there's 5 other words, right? I mean, you can do rip, lip, tip, sip, nip, right? We can probably keep going till maybe 10. But each of them is a minimal pair. Each couple is a minimal pair. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.